Hi, everyone. It's Renée Cormier from the Fractional Referral Network. Today, I'm talking to Justin Spears about common small and mid-sized business fails that fractionals can fix. Justin Spears is a U.S. Navy veteran and the founder of MXI Consulting, and he excels in business strategy and AI integration. He drives growth across government and commercial sectors. Welcome, Justin. Thanks for coming to this call today. I'm really happy to have you here. Tell me some of the most common mistakes that small and mid-sized businesses make when they try to scale their business. Scaling is a big deal. Everybody wants to grow. There's no point in having a business if you just want to be the same, right? So in the mission to scale, what are some of the big mistakes that small and mid-sized businesses make?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my favorite topics is I really love helping people to build their businesses to be able to scale. So I've ran into a lot of pain points over the year. One of them, scaling without structure. You'd be surprised at how many business owners they don't understand what it means to have a foundation or to have processes or systems in place. And so, with my background in corporate strategy, and I also have a background in tech as well, it's how do we build that infrastructure for your business? So most of them, they're just not aware. They're great at their widget or their process or their service, but they don't have a keen understanding of business administration when it comes down to systems and processes. Another one is lack of focus. They're everywhere. You hear the old adage, and I absolutely hate it: throw everything at the wall and hope something sticks.
Yeah.
And I'm the person that walks over and just, wipes it all off the wall and says, well, nothing's stuck. I'd rather put a drywall anchor in the wall, find out where it's supposed to go, put the right size bolt, and hang the right weighted item on the wall. Now we got a good picture, you know? And so, yeah, just a lack of focus, and just going after every single thing that they possibly can, not honing in on their core strengths and not even knowing one of my favorite terms is, what's your unfair advantage in the marketplace?
Yeah.
Okay. Ignoring cash flow, over investment and growth without considering cash flow really leads to financial instability. And I see it all the time. And then one of my favorites to hit on is poor delegation. Owners take every single thing on. They often wear way too many hats, which limits their ability to focus on high impact activities, focus on creativity, and even bare minimums of market research. So I see these four things pretty common.
So what do you think is like the first thing companies should look at when they're looking before they scale? They have to get all their ducks in a row. What is the first thing that they should tackle?
The first thing is their processes. They need to know what is their standard operating procedures? What are their workflows? What are their communication flows? And so, even with, solopreneurs nowadays, I work with them to understand that you start a business with a departmental structure. And so I even have, a very accountable model of when we're in these meetings and we're in these teachings of teaching them, take off your marketing manager hat, put your operations manager hat on. Leave your marketing stuff aside. Now we're going to focus on your operations department. Okay. Take that off and go to your contracts and legals department. And so that's where you can start building out all of your standard operating procedures, your workflows, your communication flows, things like that. But if we back up a little bit further, what's your strategic plan? What are your strategic initiatives? What are your sub initiatives? How are you measuring them? How do you have a structure in your business to implement these? Most companies that I talk with nowadays, they think that a strategic plan is a business model. And it's not. It's a very real living document that guides what you do in your business. And that's where, I work with these businesses to map out their strategic plan using what I call an implementation plan that maps out all of your actions in a company for the next 2 years into 2 week sprints, 2 week intervals. So giving a lot of structure within a company really allows them to know what they're doing, why they're doing, how they're doing it, and where their company is going, and most importantly, how to pivot along the way because they know their processes and systems.
I've always found, and I don't know if you've noticed this too, but a lot of companies sort of they'll hire a consultant or something to come in and write a plan, and plan ultimately ends up in a drawer or in a box in the bottom of a
Mhm.
of a box on the boardroom floor. I mean, they'll spend all this money for all this stuff because they've got big plans, but they never implement. And again, they've got this, they just abandon it, you
Yeah.
know. Um, what's wrong with having a plan and actually implementing it?
Yeah, I agree. And I see this all the time. Even before I started consulting on strategy and growth models, I saw this all the time. I was with companies and organizations where, we would bring in outside strategists, and nobody really took them serious. You'd see some great strategic plans, like you said, just, collecting dust in a drawer somewhere. And so that was, one of my big motivators of how do we make strategic planning, but strategic models interactive? How do we make it engaging? So, that's where I use like design thinking methodologies to host workshops, get people engaged, find out, what's the equity within the company? What can people do? Where do we want to go? What do we want to be remembered for? But I want to hear everybody's perspective on that as well. We find a lot of great surprises. So, that's where we can inspire employee ownership, employee engagement. But then we keep bringing it back to now we have this big grandiose event that resulted in a strategic plan that everybody was part of. And then once we have that structured, yeah, it's a great living document. But the implementation plan is the key thing. That's teaching companies how to operate using the strategic plan. So I use a process called Scrum methodologies. And so that's where we teach businesses how to manage off of 2 week cycles. And so, they can, anything they want to do, they can put like a backlog and we can heat map it every couple of weeks to define, hey, how are we doing this initiative? And so at any given time, yes, we have a strategic plan, but within it, now we know what we're doing, how we're doing, why we're doing it, and how to pivot along the way. And then most people can't answer those questions about their business. And so by having this interactive model where in real time, this becomes the living guide to your business. So it's really taking, this old adage of, some random consultant comes in, builds a document for you, you really don't know. You're like, well, I did what I was supposed to every, 5 years. To, strategic plans need to be done every 2 years and they need to be a living part of your business. And that's a core thing that I like to teach people. And so I found a model where we make it a core part of your business, make it, the census of your business there. That really it guides your meetings, it guides how you operate, it guides, the conferences you go to, the sales strategies, things like that. And so early on, what I'm seeing is the earlier we can work with these businesses to build this into them, the earlier we are building that infrastructure that's needed. And we get that out of the way because, I mean, that's not the part that makes money. Now we can actually start operating our business. Now that we have an infrastructure in place. And so by implementing these models, we actually increase competitiveness in the market and allows for companies that are being proactive like this to capture market share. And that's where we see the growth and scale.
Okay, so tell me one of your favorite success stories. Like, have you got a company that you've worked with that you were able to really produce something amazing for them?
Yeah, there's a number of companies I've worked with. One of them early on when I first started consulting, I was part of a team. I led all the business admin and development side, and we built a K through 12 charter school using this exact model. So we built it from the ground up, but scaled it. It's actually constructing its first major facility right now, so it's doing well. I have another government contracting business that specializes in tech. Multiple years they were trying to go after revenue and didn't get anything. Within 6 months of working with them, we closed almost $3 million in deals. So, I've worked with this tech company that I worked with formerly, that I was advising on a growth strategy. I mean, we did a very large it was an 8-figure expansion in about 20 months. I've done this at universities, I've done this at tech companies. So there's a whole variety that I've done this with. And even my own business, when I decided after consulting, I was consulting for 6 years on the side, on these specific topics and methodologies. A few years ago, I decided, you know what, I want to start my own firm and take this full time. And I really want to help a lot of businesses out. So I built my business with this very model. Um, within a matter of just a few months, I surpassed my corporate income that I walked away from.
Oh, very cool. I'd love you to share that with me.
Yeah.
Can you package that and sell it?
Yeah, well, and that's what I do is so we have
Yeah.
our custom solutions roadmap where, and when we call it custom, we keep it very bespoke because we have our milestones and methods along the way, but everything's custom. I mean, every business is unique and it's got to
Yes.
be built from the ground up, whether, what's the exit strategy or is there an exit strategy? Those are key things to consider. What market do you want? What does your freedom of life look like that you want in managing your business? It's very different in a digital landscape we're in. So those are things that most people prior to 10 years ago never even thought about.
So how do you use AI integration to help companies scale?
Yeah, so a lot of AI integration comes with integrating AI into their operations. So actually teaching companies how to not just be lean, but to increase productivity, which naturally will increase product or profitability. And so when we're building the infrastructure and building these SOPs or standard operating procedures or workflows, things like that, we're implementing AI tools along the way. So, you have each person in your company becomes a subject matter expert. They were hired to be an expert in their field and an operator of AI, which makes them a quality control analyst now. So now they have a team, 4, 5, 6 different AI bots, some that are autonomous that we can program for them and deploy to their systems. Some using, GPTs like Chat GPT or Claude, things like that. There's a number of different ones. Or even one of my favorites that I recommend is to build an internal LLM for the company. Now you have a closed system that's very secure. And so we integrate those in from, a public access AI platform to your internal LLM through a whole process. So that way it keeps your information secure. You can still broaden your reach for capture and processing, things like that. But more importantly, if every employee has 4 to 6 different AI employees working for them, just imagine how much more productivity they have, but also, if they're not bogged down on the mundane tasks of, okay, I've got all this data, let me generate a visualization report. I've got all this data, let me, conduct this research, things like that, things that we have to do on a regular. If we now program it to do this for us and we become the coordinator for all of it, that's a huge amount of productivity. We're seeing 400% productivity increase right now with
Wow.
integrating AI across business administration operations.
So I would think that's an easy sell, but on the other side, there are a lot of people that may be resistant to this whole
Mhm.
AI concept. What are you finding in your experience? Are you getting any pushback on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's anytime that there is a revolutionary release of a new technology, which is really what it is, when the internet first came out. And so I tell people all the time, I say, where are the businesses that, prohibited the integration of the web?
Yes,
Well, they're not here.
they're not around.
Anybody that exchanges,
They're finding
monetary
their
money.
bones in caves.
Yeah, well, and every single bank in America is tied by federal regulation to the web for audits and monitoring and things like that. So if your money touches a bank, your business operations integrates the web. The same thing is going to happen with AI. The problem with the prohibitors of AI is they're not understanding how competition works in business. And that's a passionate topic of mine because people have an idea they think everybody should buy from them. No, you need to show them why they should.
Yes, yes.
But if you're trying to be competitive in your business and your margins are so tight, so like I have a business that I'm working with right now that we just scaled their margins from 20% to 85% using AI integration. I can go into negotiations, cut 10% off and close the deal right there. But the person that's, competing against me with 20% margins, they're not even on my radar of competition anymore.
Yeah.
So we can get
So,
more work done with less people using advanced technology. And every business owner needs to understand this.
so what does your ideal client look like? Like, who's in your sweet spot?
My sweet spot spans from, so I have a startup model. My primary sweet spots is your small to medium businesses. So, 1 million revenue, a team of maybe two or three, up to, 200 million revenue, 40, 50 employees. Um, I
It's a
really like
big
work.
jump.
Yeah, it is. So I mean, the SMBs is a pretty broad range. And I work a variety of different industries, very industry agnostic because it's a systematic process that's custom to them. Um, and so, about 2 years ago, I was working on this and was like, I love the entrepreneurship space. And I was seeing, especially here in Orlando, Florida, my home, it's rated the number one hotspot for entrepreneurs and startups in the nation right now. So, I wanted to look at how can I better serve them, especially with my background in both education experience and in entrepreneurship. And so I scaled it down to a entrepreneurship model where we can now serve on a scaled basis startups as well. The big difference with startups is you don't have a lot of change management. You're working with them early on. So a number of the things that you have to kind of break down, the change management, the stakeholder management, things like that are pretty common in our SMBs that we work with, a lot of that goes out the window. So now what we would normally work with, for 4 months or 5 months with most companies, most startups, I can do this within 30 days, sometimes 45 days now. And so it drastically reduces the cost and makes it more affordable and it's accessible for them as well.
Um, a lot of the smaller businesses, I'm sure maybe you've seen this, they don't always understand the relationship between sales and profitability. They might have great sales, but they're wasting a lot of money somewhere,
Yes.
and they end up with cash flow issues. How do you make them aware of, from a consulting standpoint, you're walking into a business, what do you do to make them aware of where they've got leaks?
Yeah, so a lot of it is just running analysis models. So when we any client, any company that we first start working with, people call it discovery. I call it courting because we're going to work together for a little bit. And my goal is to actually have long-term relationships as well. And when they need our services, they come back and we help them along the way. But during the courting process, we have a very lengthy assessment. And the reason is so there's five different assessments. Between the five, there's about two, I think it's a 282 question assessment. And it goes back to the very genesis of your business. What was the motivation? What are your failures and successes along the way? What former partnerships did you have? What JVs did you have? Have you ever started a shoulder business or, a business associated to this? What's the experience? And then we do an employee equity model where now we're asking a questionnaire to all of the employees in the company. And this includes the founders and owners as well. But anybody affiliated with the business, we're asking them, what are their passions? What are their skills? What do they like doing? What do they currently do? What is their past performance? And you'd be surprised what we find in these businesses. Not just learning more about the business, but also like we dive into their accounting models. We dive into their cost simulation models. How are they building their wrap rates? How are they building their overhead models, their G&As, things like that? What is their current fringe benefit programs? Where are those resources to? And so we keep ourselves very connected to all of these different type of vendors that companies need so that we can actually recommend ones that, sometimes we can negotiate discounts for them and things like that. But, we really dive into the business operations of, and one of the big ones for me is profitability because most people have an inflated and skewed sense of their profitability. And it's like, I want to know what is my hard numbers on each deal. If I built this model or I built this offer and it's, 50,000, and we're going after this project, and I think that I'm a 20% net margin, which is very low already. But at 20%, I go into it and, I do a cost analysis on it and do a breakdown, deconstruct it. And I see, well, actually, you're at 12%. At 12%, it's not even worth going after the work.
Yeah.
So now how do we implement these models that my company specializes in to increase that profitability? So you may be getting the exact same dollar value deal, the same contract value with the same contract ceiling, but how internally do we increase productivity and profitability? Because that's what will make us more competitive. Not telling one of our company's customers, hey, you need to come up with $20,000 more dollars or 200,000 more. The customer is never going to do that. They're going to find someone else. So internally with this new technology, how do we implement it to be competitive? Because if we're not doing it, then another company is, and then you're out of the game.
So when you go into a company and you start looking at the people and what their jobs are and so on, um, how do you assess who's worth keeping and who's worth replacing, who's worth eliminating entirely? Like what do you do around that?
Yeah, so first strategy is we don't actually want to eliminate anybody.
Okay.
Yeah, we our recommendation and our desire is to restructure a company and structure in a way that every employee becomes a subject matter expert and an operator of AI. Because that person was hired for a reason. They have knowledge, they have experience, they have, that thing that they bring to the company. They're there for a reason. So now, how do we transform that into a hybrid role? And a lot of times it's actually pretty easily done from a change management standpoint. I mean, there's a whole system to training them and building these solutions, but the biggest one is the reluctance to change. And so what I tell them is, what's the number one employee issue raised in every company in America? Lack of resources.
Yes.
So if you tell them you're providing them resources that will free up their time, free up their focus, free up their creativity, and inspire their inputs, 90% of the issues that you read from, ADKAR methods and John Cotter and, the godfathers of change management, those go away. So when we're talking to employees about this, it's like, hey, I actually want to give you 5 AI employees that do this work for you. So like a good employee, you tell them what to do, they do it, and they bring it back to you. So everybody becomes a manager.
As you're you go into a company and you develop systems and processes and so on. One thing I've always noticed in small businesses, owner operated type businesses, is that usually there's an admin person who takes a lot of the bullshit off of the business owner's plate, that designs all the systems and the processes to the best of their ability. It's usually something only they know how to do.
Hmm.
I find, that admin person is someone who holds the keys to the kingdom. Nothing, if that person gets sick or goes on vacation, all hell breaks loose.
Hmm.
And then is unfireable, even if they're in the way, right? Let's say the person's got, and this has, I've seen it where the admin has a really bad attitude, um, you know, but is such a key person to the business owner that he or she is reluctant to let that person go. Um,
Hmm.
and I would think that coming in as a consultant, one of the first things you need to do is sort of, uh, you know, get that person to cooperate with you, but they're used to having all this control. How do you manage that relationship? How do you get it so that um, you that person doesn't feel slighted, uh,
Hmm.
but will still make sure that when your back is turned, that the things that you want that person to do to make the company more efficient will continue to get done in the right way rather than that awkward way that that person developed that's not not scalable, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so first thing I do is, it's kind of an apologetics approach is, I want to speak their language, make sure I'm not throwing, some foreign Greek at them. And I ask them, what's the sole purpose of your role in the company? And it's to drive revenue, whether it's,
Mhm.
increasing margins, increasing productivity, leaning things out, making your role is tied to dollars and operating in the black versus the red. So then I show them, okay, so be a hero of the company. That's your role. Your role is to be a hero of the company. Let me show you how this model, you become the next level hero. productivity and profitability that you could only dream of getting under your current model, you can now have within like 30 days.
Right.
And so how is the administration, how is your cabinet, how is your board going to value that when you start showing them you start looking at your quarterly trends, your customer acquisition costs, your lifetime values, things like that, your margins, that every company should be monitoring already. And, those are hero data stats. So you show like, oh, we're doing good, we're doing good. Hey, we implemented this new solutions map. Boom. Like, okay, we just made some money because
Yes.
and so I tell people, I was like, I'm no stranger to talking about money because most people that start businesses are in business to make money. That's a passion that they bring to make money. And so people like this admin person, your quality control managers, things like that, your process engineers, etc. Their job is to make sure the company makes money and find ways to lean it out or make it more efficient. And so in doing so, it's like, yeah, here you become the next hero, not just for the people that push you to make money, but for the people that are actually doing the job too. You come in as a hero to the entire workforce of you just, authorized and championed this implementation of this new process, this new system. And in doing so, now, your staff can take more time off. Now you've got bigger margins. You can focus on morale and morale initiatives in the company, which I always include in our strategic initiatives of any strategic plan. But now it's like your employees can go to doctor's appointments during the day. They can go to their kids', eighth grade graduation, things like that, because they don't have to work 80 hours a week. So we're seeing a bigger freedom of life within our entire workforce when people start understanding how to be competitive by changing their productivity models.
Mhm. Okay. And since we're part of the fractional referral network, and we haven't really talked about the role of fractionals in supporting business growth, um, a fractional is working in a small to mid-sized business. How can they know? How can they make recommendations for other areas outside of their own line of expertise? How do they see how can they, everybody's interconnected, right?
Mhm.
How can you draw that line and have someone not tell you stay in your own lane kind of
A
thing?
lot of it comes to resource management. I mean, I'm a huge, huge champion of fractionals. I have a whole model of how, as we were talking about earlier, the startup. One of the big things that I implement with startups is a fractional roadmap. And in
Mhm.
doing so, some fractionals will lead to full-time FTEs, employees, and some want to stay fractionals and they'll cycle out and when their 10 years up or the company hits milestones, things like that. But the benefit of fractionals is, it allows you to scale very fast. It allows you to be very, very competitive,
Yes.
which is nice. And then when you start optimizing your businesses and reducing meetings and all this other crazy stuff that actually doesn't drive revenue, fractionals can be very effective. They're very executive in their roles. And so one of the benefits of a fractional coming in is resource management. They can optimize the allocation of people, time, money, maintain balances during growth. They bring so many resources. And so if they come in laser focused, so say you hire, like myself, somebody, my background's in growth. So you hire a fractional chief growth officer. They're going to be focused on what is that strategic road mapping? What are KPIs? What's resource management? Things like that. So it's not just specifically what they do, but now they can actually come in and they can lead entire sections of businesses, entire branches and departments, things like that from a fractional standpoint, during that tenure.
Now, do you hire fractionals to work with your clients?
I do, yeah. Mhm.
And what do you look for? What qualities do you look for in a fractional?
One is ability to be independent.
Mhm.
Very much so. But also, the time management is a huge one. Most fractionals that I know and I've seen in the industries, they'll work with 4 or 5 companies.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful place for fractionals to be in. You have experienced executives that, they don't want to work a traditional CEO or COO or chief revenue officer role, because we know, most companies demand 80 hours of your time, and you got to travel 80% of that, and you're away from all this stuff. But when we scope down what that fractional is going to do, we actually get to niche down in our company of, I need somebody very granular, very micro focused on doing this. I'm going to hire them as a fractional, typically 15, maybe 20% of the time. We're going to get under a retainer with them, and they are going to do that. They don't need to be involved in many other things that the executives are, because they are very focused on time management. So they come in and they show a different model of efficiency where, yeah, you're not going to have an hour and a half meeting of executives every single day. 90% of the time, that is a complete waste of revenue. You can do so much more with capital. And so we implement these efficiency models. And so all the fractionals that I do employ to our clients, we do that using a number of different software tools to help them be very efficient. So there's project management software, there's different AI tasks, things like that. And so using that, it allows for increased communication, increased collaboration. And then in doing so, it allows the company to be very focused and streamlined. Again, going back to increasing productivity and profitability.
Okay, excellent. I really appreciate your chatting with me today. Is there anything that you would like to add that you would like our listeners to know?
Reach out with any questions. I love to dialogue. I love to try, help anybody out that I can. If you go to my website up there, mxiconsulting.com, or find me on LinkedIn or Facebook. My website, I have a page called My Knowledge Vault. So there's some different downloadable ebooks that I wrote. Things like learning how to be a holistic entrepreneur. It's debunking the myth of, the 9 to 5 and the personal versus professional life. When you're an entrepreneur, you just learn to manage your time.
It blurs, yeah.
Yeah, but one of the
That's
things I mentioned earlier
what
is
I
the
like about
unfair
it.
advantage. I want companies to know, what is your unfair advantage, things like that. So I have a number of different ebooks that they can download. And then if they would like further support, please reach out to me. You can DM me, you can email me, you can text me 407-426-4424. And we can jump on a call and see, how can we help your business be more productive and be more profitable.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Justin. Really appreciate having you here today. I'm going to end our recording. There we go.